A native of Chicago, Keena Turner began his football career at the Chicago Vocational High School, home of the football legend Dick Butkus. He attended Purdue University, and while there, Keena was a two-time All-Big Ten, All-American, and Boilermakers MVP. In 2006, his alma mater included him into the university's Hall of Fame. In 1980, Keena was drafted in the second round by San Francisco 49ers and played outside linebacker with the team of the decade until his retirement in 1990. His 11-year contribution to the team resulted in 4 Super Bowl wins and a trip to the Pro Bowl. After the NFL, Keena continued his association with the 49ers, working in player and community relations. In 1992, he joined his former coach and mentor, Bill Walsh, at Stanford University, where he served as an assistant coach until 1995. Upon leaving Stanford, Keena launched his radio and television career. He worked for 15 seasons as a color analyst for the Niners pre-games on Channel 5. Okay, Keena's dedication to excellence is not limited to the playing field. He has been a constant supporter of the Correct Family House in San Francisco for the past 30 years. For 10, Keena created, implemented, and judged a student essay contest for the Tracy Middle School system, emphasizing the importance of academics. In its 27th year, Keena Turner Boys and Girls Golf Tournament brought in well over $6 million as a total. Looking forward to your speech. Best brother-in-law ever.
Thanks so much,
let's give it up for Keena Turner here, folks. Get breakfast club. Welcome to Keena Turner here. Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks so much, Carol. Awfully sweet, and thanks so much for having me. Good morning, everyone, again. And wow, just such a rich history here with the Golden Gate Breakfast Club. It's really an honor for me to be here. And you guys kind of stole some of my thunder with your honesty about who your real teams are here along the way. So I appreciate the honesty. When I'm in person, I kind of get everybody to stand up and move around and get loose. And then I say, all the 49er fans sit down. So I was going to have you put your hands up, and the 49er fans put their hand down so we could get a feel for who was on the Zoom, but I kind of know already. So again, appreciate all that honesty and all the support and love through those introductions. You guys are wonderful. And so I tell you, for me, when I thought about kind of being a part of the breakfast this morning and the rich history going back to 1946, we kind of share that year of an inception, the 49ers and the Breakfast Club. And so, for me, being around the team for the last 43 years, it really has been an amazing and wonderful journey and experience. And one of the things that I'm often asked about kind of my time with the Niners compared to what's going on now is, what's the difference? Are the players different? What's so different about the environment? Why haven't we won another Super Bowl? Those usual questions that you get along the way. And really what I have found after, being around it and seeing different generations come along and enter the sport and come and play for this franchise with such a rich history is there's really not a lot of difference in the athlete himself. There's not a lot of difference when it comes to lining up and playing the sport. The things that are important or were important to us as players way back when, you really find is a part of what the player today feels that's important. I kind of list them as 3 really key things for guys that you find in today's world and in my time that are important. That's obviously the physical talent. There's an emotional intelligence that you have to get to have a long career. And then there's just a mental makeup, just kind of who you are as a person that really decides a lot of your success, along with being very fortunate when it comes to some of the injuries that can happen throughout your career. So preparation, commitment, dedication, you're being resilient, dealing with pressure, the adversity, all of those kinds of things that are a part of any of our professions, really. What we all have had to kind of go through to get to this point, kind of are a part of the experience that I think athletes of yesteryear, my time and before, you mentioned the great Jimmy Johnson. Man, what an amazing Hall of Famer he was, and yet just such, as Tim said, such a great man, And so you find that in our history, but also a part of today's players. Now, what I will say is different. The environment is different. The atmosphere is different. The generation is different. All of those things are very true about today's athlete and the environment. I've said, time and time again, had we in the 80s had to deal with social media and, the acceptance of cameras everywhere, exposing every single thing that we did, and have to live your life in a very public manner, and maybe it'd be a little different back then too, So I think as we, and Alan talked about it, over 1 million years, man, there's a lot of things that have happened, and we've only just started to kind of, have some real understanding in our recent history, kind of about who we are. And so as we evolve in this great opportunity of life and celebrating another rich birthday yesterday with the 4th, man, are there so many things to celebrate, along with obviously the challenges of today and the imperfection that we all can admit to, that is a part of our experience. But I think the right attitude gets us to look forward and be excited about those opportunities. So what I thought I would do is not bore you with the 80s as much, and talk a little bit about the schedule of today, right? Today's athlete, what he goes through, kind of what the year is like, and relate that a little bit to kind of what we did way back when. And so in the calendar, we're kind of in this sweet spot of being away. So there's about 5 weeks between June and August in there, depending on when coach lets us go, that the players and the staff are away from football. We're off. We report back in somewhere around July 24th. And a few days after that, training camp will begin. And in 12 to 14 days, we'll play our first preseason game. Now, when the 24th gets here, and up until then, the players are required, or not required, but they should stay in shape, right? So that means they're still working. They're still training. They're on their own. There's no supervision. There's no coaching. They have to be ready for report day. Once report day starts, on the 25th or 6th for the players and the staff, we go until we lose. And the last couple of years, that's meant that we've gotten as far as the NFC Championship game, and that ends your season. So in that time between that last game and the start of training camp, you're pretty much working every day. The players have 1 day off a week, but that really doesn't happen much, because you're either in getting treatment if you've got a bump or a bruise or a serious injury, or if you just need to maintain your conditioning and strengthening, you're in. And so for the most part, every player is in every day. And as far as the staff goes, there are no days off. So the coaches, the personnel staff are working all the way through. And so from the 24th of July until we lose, you're pretty much in the office every day. And there are some days off in there. So when the bye week comes up for the players, it's mandatory that they get 4 days off. Our general manager on the football side, John Lynch, will give the personnel staff a few days off in that period. But for the most part, you're in every day. And so that's a different schedule, as a mindset for the players, and obviously emotionally, just the preparation that goes into that. Now, in comparison with the other sports, right? So basketball, 80 some games, baseball, 160 games or so. For the most part, until you get to the end of the season, any one game along the way doesn't have the same weight as one of our 17 games, right? We only have 17, which puts a different kind of emphasis on every Sunday. You think about a schedule or your win-loss record along the way. One game for us last year, was the difference in us being seeded as the number 1 seed. So those Sundays become pretty grueling in the sense of the weight, right, of what they are. So you get on a streak of losing 2 or 3 games along the way. It can be pretty rough on that Monday when you come back. So that gets us, through the year. But the days off in the week kind of looks like this. So you start on a Sunday, you play your game, you come back on Monday, you review your film, you get your treatment, you get ready. And Tuesday's your day off for the players. Again, the staff works every day. Wednesday and Thursday are your toughest days for players. The new game plan goes in. All of the emphasis on who you're, and the scheme is approached on those 2 days. Friday, you back off just a bit. If we're on an away game, we travel on a Friday. If it's back east, if it's close by, like Seattle or Arizona, we leave on a Saturday, and we go play and start it all over again. So, what does it take physically for the players? Obviously, it's just keeping your body up, dealing with nicks. Once it starts, you're always playing with something physically that you have to maintain and manage. Emotionally, it's up and down, right? And the guys that handle that balance the best are the ones that are most consistent in their play. The mental makeup has to do with just who you are as a player and who you are as a guy that gets you through the very, very rough spots of what the game is from week to week. And so that gets you through the season for us. Depending on where you end up, for us, the NFC Championship game the last couple of years, and obviously we know that we came up a little short there. Once the season's over, you take a few days off, but then the draft is coming. The combine is the end of February. And so your preparation with your scouts who've been working all year to line up kind of who our potentials will be is the focus. And from there, everything is focused on the draft. The players are now away for just a little bit. Once the draft happens for us in April, you get your new players out right after that. And then your off-season workout program begins. We didn't have an off-season workout program structure like they do today. So once our season was over in the 80s, you could get lost for 5 months and come back, in June for a mini camp and then training camp in July. So that's very different. I think it's necessary. It took me a while to come to understand how necessary OTAs were because there's not a lot of, training camp in my day was 5 or 6 weeks compared to 2 weeks in today's game. So there's just a different approach to preparation in that way. So that gets you, through the off season, and then you start it all over again. So it's a grueling kind of 6 to 7 months, but that's what the league is. And but as I said in the beginning, I think the guys today are still built in that same fashion. I just think the sport is just kind of administered and appreciated in a very different way. And with that, I'd like to open it up for some questions.
I know we got lots of questions here for you today here. Keena, we're so happy to have you with us. It's a thrill to have you with us. I know we got a lot of folks who may ask you questions. So go ahead if you just want to raise your hand. We also throw your questions into the chat. Alan Garber has the first question here. Alan, over to you.
Hi, Keena. My first thing is a comment. I want to tell you a little story. Back in 1973 or 4, when you were in the 6th grade or so, I went to see the Patriots play the 49ers in Boston, in the Boston University field where the Patriots played. Both teams were terrible that year. The 49ers beat the Patriots. Both teams ended up the season 2-12. So they've come a long way over the last 50 years or so. Now, my question to you is this: both for when you were at Purdue and when you were with the Niners, when in college, who was the toughest player you played against, and what was the toughest team that you played against? And the same question when you were with the Niners, the toughest player you played against and toughest team.
Wow. Well, that's definitely going to be a tough one for my professional career. But in college, and I hate to make this admission with my wife looking at me, Alan.
I went to Ohio State, by the way.
Okay. Well, we did okay against Art Sleester back in my day, but I hate to make this admission here in front of my wife because she went to Notre Dame. But listen to this memory I have. So I think it's my sophomore, junior year. We're playing Notre Dame, right? And I went to Purdue, like we know, and Notre Dame. That's an interstate rivalry for us, right? Yeah. And so we've got Notre Dame down by 2 touchdowns, okay, going into the 3rd quarter. Their first-string quarterback had played so bad they took him out. The second-string quarterback comes in and we break his collarbone. He actually breaks his collarbone on a play. They put the first-string quarterback back in, right? He's still having a tough time. They take him out. And finally, at the end of the 3rd quarter, they look down at the end of the bench and put in that guy, Joe. And this guy comes in and beats us in the 4th quarter, right? So he sticks out in my mind. And so, the good news is, obviously for me, we became teammates. But when I walked into the 49er locker room, I knew who he was, right? And what he was capable of. So, yeah, that guy sticks out for sure. That interstate rivalry was great, along with our rivalry with Indiana, which probably was a bigger rivalry, Purdue and Indiana. But Notre Dame was high on my list. And so that takes care of college. Now in the pros, I think because in your division, you play guys, twice a year, twice every year. Those games with the Rams, with Atlanta, with New Orleans, those were just grind games, And probably the guy that kept me up at night that we had to play against was Eric Dickerson. He was just such a talented back, obviously a Hall of Famer, but he was the guy. He was big, and yet whenever he touched the ball, he could go the distance. So he was a guy that I probably thought about. And, my rookie year when we played the Rams, they ran us out of the stadium both games my rookie year. We went 6-10 my rookie year, lost 8 in a row. And it was a pretty, it was a pretty rough beginning to my career. And Vince Ferragamo, I think, was the quarterback at the Rams at the time. And man, he scored. I thought he was the best quarterback in the league after playing 2 games against him my rookie year. Obviously things turned around for us the next year, but those guys jump out. But man, Walter Payton and all of the other great backs like that were something to think about for me too in prep.
Great, thank you.
We got Tim Durkin has a question, and then Carol. Tim.
Yeah, Keena, a person all of you know as being a terror on the field, winning 2 Super Bowls with the Niners, 3 with the Cowboys, is Charles Haley. And he has become a pillar of the community in the Dallas area, giving money, raising money, making appearances. He's up there with Jimmy Johnson in terms of a nice guy. But when he was on the field, I mean, there was almost no stopping him. What was he like in the locker room? Was he a leader? Was he a captain? And how does somebody get to be a captain of the team? Is it coaches or players that choose them?
Yeah, well, it's definitely players and coaches that participate in that decision. But Charles was a terror, man. He, but and I love Charles. He's one of my best friends, and it's so great to hear you talk about the man that he is, Tim, and that he's become. And he's talked very publicly about the demons that that he struggled with throughout his career and in his personal life. And I have such admiration for him because he's been willing to talk about those things publicly. He's been wanting to help others through having a public discussion about it. And he walks the talk when it comes to supporting his community, caring about kids, caring about my family. He's amazing, as a human being. But he's also showed his weak moments and been able to talk about them and make admissions to them. He struggled with bipolar, he struggled with addiction, and those have an effect on your personality. And I love that he has always been willing to be honest about who he is. And the football player speaks for itself. He's in the Hall of Fame. And you don't get in there without being a terror, and he was. Now, he wasn't a captain because in those days, I think, it was hard for him to separate the field from the locker room at times. But man, there's nobody that didn't want him in the foxhole when it was time to go across the line.
It's generally believed here in Dallas that him coming to Dallas was when he won the Super Bowl. He was the one addition to the team on defense that brought the Super Bowl. And yes, he does struggle, but most of the time he's winning.
He's an amazing dude. Yeah, amazing dude.
Thank you for that. Let's say
Thank you,
Carol. Tim. Oh, thank you, Tim, for that. Carol, you had a comment or a question?
You might not want to answer this question, but what are your
Here we go. Alert! Off the record conversation.
What are your sentiments about the Colin Kaepernick debacle?
Well, geez, I don't know if I'd call it a debacle, but there's 2 sides to that. There's Colin, the football player, and there's Colin, the guy that saw something that he wanted to speak up about, and so I have respect for both those guys, but the football player, I think we didn't necessarily get a chance to see all of that he had. I think the snapshots of his play speak for themselves. He was a talent. He was a dual threat. He had a gun for an arm, and he could run. Now, what he spoke up about wasn't necessarily anything new. It wasn't. Others had spoke up about those things, I think the way it was, received, is where the discussion is, or how he went about it is where the discussion is. Is it appropriate, or is this where it should be displayed? And so those are personal views, which I think everybody's very much entitled to. So yeah, I mean, I think I have great respect for Colin, and he did some great things for us on the field. And I have respect for anybody that is willing to make a sacrifice, to take a stand, and there can be disagreements along the way. And I think that's what's exciting about our country, is we can have disagreements, and hopefully we can, have some conversations along the way to get us to a better place. And I'm a firm believer that we're more alike than we are different. So, yeah.
Thank you.
But I don't think it was a debacle.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. We got Carl Walsh has a question or a comment here. Carl, good to see you, pal. Here, over to you.
Well, I was just saying that as a native of Los Angeles, of course, in the 80s, I was a Rams fan, and I always dreaded those games with the 49ers. Never missed one, ever. But you just couldn't help the respect that you just had to have for the class organization that the 49ers were. And as long as they weren't playing the Rams, I was a 49ers fan.
I appreciate that, Carl. And, Susan talked about the guy that established this, and that was Bill Walsh. He was, I tell you, he still impacts my, my thought process, kind of who I am. You remember I was 22 years old when I met Bill Walsh, and he began to influence my life. And, I had a unique position or view, because I got an opportunity to play for him as a player, and then work for him as a coach, and then really have the opportunity as one of my mentors to spend time with him along the way. And he established who we were, and the whole idea of being a class operation. Class isn't something you say about yourself. It's hopefully something that people say about you. And he really was able to establish a culture and a mindset in those days that obviously has carried us through.
Keena, thank you so much. We're at 8:29. Do you have time to answer maybe two more questions for us?
Sure.
Got two more questions here for you. Great. Let's go to Bert Hill, and then we'll go to Janice Litvin, and then Michael Milstein. Bert, over to you.
Yeah, just credit. I'm not sure if he was on the team at the same time as you, but do you remember Todd Lewis?
Todd Lewis.
Does that ring a bell with you?
Was he 70s guy or
80s?
80s? Todd
Yeah.
Lewis. I don't. The name's not jumping out at me, Bert. Was he a running back? What was the position?
No. I don't remember which position he had. He was a member of the club for a number of years. I think about 10 years. He died in 2017.
And he played for us for a number of years. Send that name to Todd Lewis. I got to remember that, Bert. I don't.
Okay.
Showing my age here on you.
I'll send you a message offline. Yeah. I'll try and get his history. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Then we got Janice Litvin is next.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to visit us, Keena. I was looking forward to this for a long time. You mentioned the brilliant Bill Walsh and how he inspired you. Can you share with us the top 1, 2, or 3 valuable lessons he taught you, or how he inspired you?
Wow. Well, he was one of the few influences on me that had this amazing big picture view. He really appreciated, supported, have an imagination in the sport, in the approach. He loved to have. He was secure in that he wanted thoughtful, intelligent, bright people around him. And yet he had the ability, along with that big picture, to take you through a process of step by steps to get there. And so he could set a vision, he could set the plan, and he could motivate, intimidate, he could push, he could pull. He could do all the things necessary to influence the direction. And my wife's like, tell the story when you were called. So my rookie year, I wasn't starting. Willie Harper and was starting at outside in front of me, and again, we lost 8 games in a row, and somewhere in there, he called me in and two other linebackers or 2 other players, and he just simply said, I'm not getting enough out of you guys. He said, now it's not that I'm looking for different guys. It's just I'm not getting enough out of this group, and so. It was pretty indirect, right? He didn't say what he needed out of us. He didn't say what he wanted, But then a week later, he cut one of the guys that was in the meeting. And this was during the season. He cut one of the guys that was in the meeting. And I said, oh, that's what he meant.
Oh my.
So the next day, so sometimes we need that inspiration. And even in today's game, and we talk about it, sometimes a guy has to be released before he understands, the reality of the business. Bill was a guy that just really carried himself in a way that was an inspiration to all of us because he was so detailed. Joe talks about the perfection in the way that he coached. I remember once in practice, Dwight Clark ran a go route, and Joe Montana threw the ball nicely, 30, 40 yards down the field, and Dwight turned slightly to catch the ball, just slightly in his pattern, and Mike Holmgren, our offensive coordinator at the time, said, "Whoo, beautiful, Joe, pretty ball, it's great." And Bill walked by and said, "No, it wasn't. Remember, Joe, I want the ball 6 inches away from his chest." And so Bill coached to perfection. If a tight end ran a 5-yard out and it was supposed to be 5.5 yards, Bill would say, "Let's run it again." And so he coached towards perfection. And that was kind of who he was, and it's kind of who we became. It took us a while. We won a Super Bowl, and then we went 3-6 the next year in a strike-shortened year. And I think as a team, a young team, we learned that every year is, singular to itself. Every year is you're back at the bottom of the mountain and trying to climb back up. And Bill coached in that way to perfection. And so, we win it one year, we don't make the playoffs the next, we lose to the Redskins in the NFC Championship the next year. And then the next year we go 18-1. And I think that 4 years established who we were. And after that, we had runs of, being close, not being there. And then in 88, we win it again. And in 89, we go back to back. And the third year, we lose in the NFC Championship, going for 3 in a row. And so I think Bill established in us the need and the hunt for perfection, and that it was every year was a dogfight to get to the top of the mountain.
Thank you for that. Wow, what a great series of questions and answers here today. Susan Royan has a question for you. Susan.
Okay, so I loved Candlestick. Where else could you get 4 seasons in one day? But what I learned, because I did do some work for the 49ers, is that the major fan group would come in from Sacramento. The move to Levi, which of course the voters voted down a new stadium in San Francisco. Has that the fan base been impacted negatively or positively by the move down there? And now I'm going to brag, Keena, because my grandson was on the 49ers for 3 or 4 years, Shane Scove out of Stanford. So I know what combine means, and I watched the draft on 2 different televisions. Anyway, but I'd love to know what you think, because I was at that first game. It was a practice game because Shane was playing, and I almost fainted in the heat. So tell me, did Levi do anything to impact the fan base?
Well, say hello to Shane for me. I really enjoyed him when he was with us. I'm sure it did. You know, I don't know the exact numbers of fans that traveled with us. You know, remember propositions D and F did pass, and then there were challenges along the way. So props D and F did pass in San Francisco. It's just the project never could, get started. At that time, Mr. DeBarlo had some legal things that came up, and that set the project back. And then we had a new mayor, and so the new mayor wasn't as supportive as maybe the old mayor. So all of those things kind of happened on the business side that eventually got us to Levi's. So I think that the business decision was necessary. There might not have been another choice for us at that time. And absolutely, I think it affected the fan base of folks that were willing to go much further, along with, maybe some of the, business decisions of, increasing all of the pricing that had to happen to make that project work. So I think there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle that got us there, but for sure it impacted the fan base.
Thank you. And I will tell Shane immediately when this is over.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mike Milstein, over to you.
You're muted, Mike.
You're muted, Mike.
Sorry. Okay. Now, can you hear me?
Yep.
Ian, how would you assess the current quarterback situation? You've got 3 potentially great quarterbacks. How do you see that falling out in the future?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's the question of the day with us, Mike, for sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously Brock did some amazing things that we're all excited about, and just hopeful that he stays on schedule with his elbow. I think, that our coaching staff, I think Kyle has kind of said that, a healthy Brock, I think he's done enough that he's probably our guy, but also, Trey has made some really great improvements throughout OTAs in the offseason in his approach. And I think Sam Donald's a guy that we were excited about when he was coming out. So I think there's, and I don't want to speak for Kyle, but I think obviously we have 3 guys that we like. So, and I think what's important when it comes to your football team is that, everyone believes that the guys on your roster can win for you, and so I think the rest of it has to play out, and I'll just follow Kyle's lead in terms of what he said about the position publicly. He's done some amazing things on the offensive side of the ball. He feels very confident about the group we have. And, and based on what I've seen, I'm excited. I'm excited for us too. But remember now, and I don't know what Joe would say, but, we had some pretty good defenses back in those days too, that helped us get there. And so we've had a pretty good defense here the last few years, and that's super important for any success that we will have. So whoever our quarterback is, we better be, top 2, 3, 4 in defense to really, have a chance.
Terrific. Any other questions here for Keena? We can't allow a time to go by without asking an inside football Eddie DeBartolo story here. You just mentioned him here. Any updates here? Anything here that you can share here with us here for folks who followed him as well?
Well, here's what I'll say, and I went through a recent experience here in February, and I had open heart surgery. I had aortic aneurysm that needed to be repaired, and Mr. DeBartolo called me every day. He's special. So he's a great man. Yeah, and he's living in Tampa now, but he called me, my wife, every day. So
he was great friends. He was great friends with our pal Sidney Mobell, who you may remember, the jeweler, San Francisco jeweler, Sidney Mobell, and so he did the same thing with Sidney, contacting Sidney on a regular basis, sending him flowers on his birthday, and so on. Such a special person. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I think. Yep.
Sorry.
No,
Bert
has a follow-up question.
I could go on and on about Mr. D, but that sums it up about him.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that story. Thank you for that story. Bert, you had a comment.
Yeah, I just said I put the obit on the chat if you want to take it down.
Oh, thank you
for Lewis, for Todd Lewis.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for that. All right, so I think that wraps up our questions here. Let's say a great thank you to Keena Turner here. What an incredible day. Thank you so very much for joining us here. Remember that we have next week here on the 12th here is that the fun does not stop in the GGBC house here. We're going to have a July 11th Booze with Betty at Lamar Carina Piranha at 5 to 7 p.m. here. So please make sure you join us with that. That's a big deal. Also, we're looking for support here and helping to organize the August 8th Booze Without Betty. How can you do Booze Without Betty? That's bananas. On the July 12th, we've got Alan Klein, The Power and Practice of Awe, with our chair of the day, Susan Royan here, and Patricia Fripp here, making sure she's running the meeting here for us as it should be done here. The pros back in the house. Thank you so very much for joining us here. Thank you, Carol, for setting this up here. It's a long time coming. Keena, you exceeded every expectation that we possibly could have here, and we had high expectations here for you. We love you. We appreciate you here. A continued recovery and stay strong, and much more to come from you here. Thank you so much very much here. Thank you to President Tony. Thank you to Craig. Thank you to Pete. Thank you to Reg for our birthday here, and we will see you back here next week with more.
Thank you, Keena.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Good job.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Keena.